Hello, this is Paul Page of the Journal of Commerce. We're sitting here at TPM Asia in Shenzhen with Tim Smith, Chief Executive for the North Asia region for Maersk Line. Tim has just given our second day keynote speech here at TPM. Tim, how do you see the development of the Chinese economy and the Chinese market in the coming years?
I think still very positively, Paul. We've seen that China fared very well throughout the downturn compared with the rest of the world, and they seem to be coming out of that in good shape as well. But I think it's very interesting for us. We've tended to view China as being the manufacturing base for the world. So very much from a transportation viewpoint, it's been an export perspective we've had on the market. What's interesting now for us in China, I think, as China continues to go up the growth league, very large population that's starting to have some significant disposable income, starting to become a market in its own right. And I think that probably the manufacturers and the retailers are starting to focus more on that. And then there are some implications arising from that for us as transport providers. We should look perhaps more at the import and domestic markets as well as the continued export strength.
Right, particularly, it has been China has been an export market. The economy's been built on exports, but we're seeing more consumption.
Yes.
Regulatorily, though, a lot of Western providers have been concerned about regulations, constraints, and prohibitions. Where do you see the regulatory market developing?
I think the Chinese government need to make their calls on this. They're the ones that are charged with looking after their country, and it's up to the rest of us to sort of play by the rules that they set for us. I do think that certainly as the inland and domestic piece starts to become more important, we expect that there's going to be more demand than supply. And we think then that there's going to be a need for more consistent investment in the inland infrastructure, the transport infrastructure. From an external perspective, we think it makes sense that they perhaps open up a little bit and allow the foreign companies to participate in that, because then you'll get a faster development, you'll get more competition, and that will in the long run help to fuel the overall economic development that the Chinese government are looking for. So that's just our perspective, but at the end of the day, they set the rules, we have to play by them.
They do indeed. One thing that people are looking for here is efficiency, and it certainly seems like there is room for efficiency that would help all sides.
Yeah.
Let's go to the macro level. How do you see capacity in the ocean industry developing for the rest of the year and also heading into 2011?
Yeah, I think this year has been an unprecedentedly strong year following the earlier unprecedentedly weak year. So this whole supply and demand picture has been fairly volatile for the last 2 years, and gradually it seems like we are now moving towards a sort of a re-established stability, which I think is a good thing. Just where we sit now, we've come off the back of a strong recovery for the last probably year or so. Volumes perhaps now starting to ease a little bit as we come into the winter period, and we probably expect that there's going to be a bit less cargo in the market for the next quarter or so. But for next year, we're still optimistic that there will be growth. Maybe it won't be such strong growth as we've seen in the years prior to 2008, and maybe the growth will be more variable in future. But in essence, we still think there's good opportunities there. And then the issue for the carriers to address is how do they balance up the supply and demand against that. There's plenty of ships out there, but our own perspective is, we think the industry has relearned a lot of important lessons in the last 2 years, economic lessons, and that we think that certainly from our perspective, if we can try to trim the capacity to meet the demand down when it goes down, but also up when it comes up, and do that in a more agile way, a faster way, we think that gives a better basis for long-term sustainability.
Can carriers really be that nimble, that quick? I mean, we're talking about a week-to-week basis here?
I think that a lot of the trends, certainly the seasonal trends, are predictable and unknown. So for those trends, I think it's quite realistic to expect that the carriers could look at maybe taking a string out for the winter off peak, or adding something back in for the summer peak period. I think that's reasonable. Doing something in a faster time frame than that, and you're really talking about you can drop a sailing here or you add a sailing there, but that requires just that you need to be prepared to do it, and you need to be able to take quick decision making. I think it's definitely possible.
You already have your plans in place for capacity for the coming quarter?
We do. We already have a number of contingencies where we can take capacity out during the off-peak period, but then equally we look to put that back in again as the demand recovers going into 2011.
How confident are you that your competitors, the other carriers, have that same kind of approach and discipline?
It's difficult to say, Paul. I mean, I think we can't be. It's not really our job to make their decisions for them. But what I am optimistic about is I think all of us learnt or relearned some very important fundamental lessons in 2008 and 9, and I think that still should be very much at the forefront of all of us, all of our thinking. We want to be profitable, we want to stay in this business for the long run. Then it means that we have to behave responsibly. We have to trim supply and demand. That's what many businesses are about. So I'm hoping that that not just us, but many other carriers will see this as the right way forward as well, and will take the same responsible approach.
Right. What about there was a lot of tension, that volatility we saw in 2010 created a lot of tension between shippers and carriers, and also involving 3PLs. How do you see the state of shipper-carrier relations right now?
Yeah. I think we have stressed things a lot, and I think the fundamentals of that were caused by the big market volatility. And rates came down very quickly, and then as the market strengthened, rates went up very quickly as well. And I think we have definitely stressed relationships. I'm hopeful, and I'm actually increasingly optimistic that all of the stakeholders in this start to see that for what it is, and that we're now trying to concentrate again and say, okay, well, we've gone through this extremely volatile 2 years, but perhaps now there's an opportunity to rebuild something based on mutual collaboration, mutual trust, and actually trying to take a longer term and more sustainable look at the future. But it is going to take a lot of effort, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it would be unreasonable to say otherwise, that we have stressed relationships in the last 2 years.
Do you see long-term contracts being a solution to some of that?
I think they could be. I think that at the moment the industry expends a lot of time and effort on an annual contractual beta. 1 year that might be good for the client, another year it might be better for the carrier. If you view it over a whole cycle, we probably end up being about square. If you could take some of that time and effort out and put that to one side and say, you know what, we're going to do business for 20% of that client's traffic, and we'll do that for 3 years. We find some way of evening out the peaks and troughs in the pricing, but actually concentrate our efforts on then trying to make it more efficient what we do, take cost out sustainably for the client as well as for us. That would be much more productive time, in my view.
Right.
So I do think that there's an opportunity for that. I'm not sure that it has really happened so far. There's been talk about it in the past. I can't point to very many good examples of where it transparently has been put in practice. But I think we're definitely open to that and interested to talk to clients who might have a similar view.
Great. Well, yeah, there has been a lot of talk about it, but we may see it someday in the future.
Okay.
Tim, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.